listening. This is the Beat and Measure podcast. We're talking about music. I'm Devin DeCarey.
I'm Jay DeCarey, and we are here to discuss all the ins and outs of music. The good, the bad, the complex, the simple, all of it.
Yep. All right. So today we're talking about genres and whether they help music or not, which is a really cool topic you came up with. I think this is an interesting thing to talk about. We don't usually talk about why genres are there in the first place. With music, and as time goes on, genres have sort of become more amorphous. They don't really hold in as much as they used to. Everything, I think, is trending towards a similar sound, or there are similar sounds being incorporated into every genre of music.
You can say where the lines have gotten more and more blurred.
Yes,
over the years. I basically view it. There's two perspectives that you can have on genres. One, of course, is from the artist, the art maker, and the creativity, and to what I found, basically being labeled, which a lot of artists do not like, yeah. And then from the consumer, which can be a completely different perspective, can actually be helpful, right. In many ways. So, what do you think, though, drove the creating of genres of music? Was it always there?
Right.
Have we just gotten more particular about it?
Yeah, I think there was a big divide in music, whereas just as music started to become more popular, as it became more diverse, at the turn of the century, the 1900s, there was a development of a new sound that could be heard on the radio, and people started to gravitate towards specific kinds of sounds, I guess. And then genres just sort of crept out of a need. If I were to guess, probably a need to keep everything separate from each other. Because you had this radio music, and then you had what was played in the concert halls, which was completely different. And sometimes the concert hall music is getting on the radio. And so if I were to guess, I think it would be a separation there between... The genres were invented to keep a separation there between pop music and rock music and the other popular music of the time, swing music, jazz. That sort of
I was
thing.
going to say, the World War I and II eras where the big band music was just pumping out and was obviously vastly different from what when you went to the symphony hall,
right?
And so that in and of itself.
Mm-hmm. And particularly in America, we just loved inventing genres of music because so many genres came out of America around this time. There was the invention of jazz and ragtime, and then blues, and eventually that turns into rock and roll. And this is all in one country. This is all in America, mind you. And then from there, it's sort of each genre has its own story, has its own identity, and that sort of spread out for a while. And now, as music has become more commercialized, producers like to take, because what do you do when you're a producer? You don't like to take risks, right? So you go with what works, and then what.
Well, it depends on the type of producer you are.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's true.
I mean, generally, you want your product to be successful.
Mm-hmm. Right, and it depends. Yeah, exactly. It depends on the producer, but I think that most of the top producers in music, they take risk-less endeavors. Like they take proven music things. Like I don't know. I just don't think that there's as much innovation in music anymore, and part of that can be attributed, I think, to genres. They're helpful, but only to a point. Artists, for example, I'm sure don't like being restricted. They want to innovate. They want to change their sound.
Yeah, and it's not just artists. I mean, we're generalizing here because there's a lot of journalists, critics, even music fans that really take the stance that genres are inappropriate. They do nothing but classify. They segregate. They put things in a box. They basically try to stifle this creative outlet that these artists have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when you want to grow, you want to try new things as an artist, and you want that freedom to do so. And really, I think that only the really, really successful musicians today either they don't want to innovate, which I don't think is the case, or they're being told to do specific things with their music. I think
very few exceptions to that.
Yeah, I think Taylor Swift has had the same sound, has locked into her sound, and she hasn't really deviated from that. And she's probably the most popular, one of the most popular singers on the radio these days. I think that Ed Sheeran, his sound has sort of been similar throughout. I mean, he does a lot with it, which is great, but it's sort of stuck in the same pocket as well.
So the fact that you brought up Taylor Swift, and so let's talk a little bit about it from the artist perspective alone. Let's
Sure.
leave what everybody else thinks about it. So I think Taylor Swift has always been a fan of pop music. I mean, but yet her introduction to the world was through the country music lane. And slowly over the years as she gravitated, even some of her country kind of became that pop country. A lot of people said it wasn't really country. It didn't seem to hurt her fan base. And in fact, when she kind of came out with that, I think the Red album was like the first where she started like, really kind of diving into it. And then the 1989 album, she just abandoned everything. She's like, okay, fine, this really is pop.
Right, yeah.
But, and it didn't hurt her in any way. I don't know that it stifled her. I don't know that anybody would care if she turned around and came out with a country album.
No.
Dolly Parton's another one that branched out into pop music, but never really left her country
No,
roots.
not at all. Dolly's very smart.
And what was funny is I think she, in her particular case, the genre thing, she obviously attacked it from a business standpoint. She was a very smart businesswoman. And she basically, I think she pulled a lot of people into country music, started listening to it just because they liked her and they could see the dynamic appeal of her music and the way she presented it. And yet at the same time not alienating her country core. Is that? Yeah,
absolutely. That's absolutely true. I think that this risk-free attitude has sort of taken. There's two major music cities. There's L.A. and then there's Nashville, and country fans have started. I guess they don't. A lot of outspoken country fans have come out and said, you're just sounding like L.A. You're just trying to sound like L.A. now. We don't have a Nashville sound anymore. There isn't that country that exists on the radio anymore. And to a degree, they're correct. A lot of the new country artists coming out have that LA pop sound instead of the folksy guitar sound that people want.
I think for some people, genres can really help. When people are comfortable, they know with their fan base, and their goal is to appeal to their fan base, then they can evolve within the lines that genre allows them to evolve. I think other people just don't care too, and depending on how big their base is, are all of their fans going to follow them into different genres? Not necessarily, but perfect example right now is Lady Gaga. Lady Gaga took 2 or 3 years out of her career, recorded an album with Tony Bennett and toured it, and people still went to go see it. So there's a perfect example of somebody who just said, no, I'm not going to be defined by this. I'm going to do whatever I'm feeling, whatever my creative outlet is pushing me to do right now.
Right. And I appreciate that about Lady Gaga. But she's one of those examples of being wildly successful. She's an incredibly successful artist. And I think maybe she was allowed to do that because of her success that she demonstrated before. I mean, before that, it was years of that radio-friendly pop dance sound.
That's true. And then once she proved herself, they kind of were like, okay. They were like,
all right, you can do that.
She became a force onto her own.
But it was years before that. And in fact, before that, she was doing all kinds of musical stuff, like
but really,
Led Zeppelin cover band stuff.
In terms to growth, though, it was a very short time. I mean, we didn't know who Lady Gaga was just 10 years ago. Or maybe just 10 years ago, we knew who she was.
Is that true?
So, yeah.
I guess you're right.
2009, maybe she came out. Maybe 2008. Anyway,
yeah.
I'm generalizing here. But about 10 years, we didn't know who she was.
That's crazy.
And even when she first came out, I would not have predicted that she was the phenomenon that she has become. Yes, I liked her right off. I was a fan right off the bat. Loved her first 2 albums. But, yeah, I would have no way that she would have evolved and that she was as good of a singer as she was, or just an artist in general.
Right.
So I think for some people it just depends on on I guess how safe the artist feels
Maybe
within their own environment to create and not care. Now, of course, again, like I mentioned, the Lady Gaga Tony Bennett thing, did she sell as many of those albums as she did her mainstream albums? Probably not, but it still was widely successful. It opened another door. I think it exposed people to her on a level that they hadn't been before, and it paved the way for a lot of her projects to evolve the way they did. I don't know that she could have made Joanne or starred in A Star Is Born if she hadn't done that album with Tony Bennett.
Yeah.
Just because. So that's an instance where the genre jumping, if it was calculated or not, I don't know. But in where it actually helped her career because it showed her versatility.
Right. And as a consumer, genres are helpful, but only to a point. I mean, we came to this discovery, I guess, the other day, or at least I came to this discovery in a previous podcast. Every time I looked at Fleetwood Mac, I would expect to hear something like, because people lumped them together with like Aerosmith and Journey and all these rock bands from the 70s, but they have a unique sound that is more folksy than those hard rock styles. And so whenever I would listen to Fleetwood Mac, I would expect to hear hard rock, and then when I wasn't hearing impressive guitar, like super in-your-face guitar work, I was like, well, this is sort of underwhelming. But then, you sit and you listen to the lyrics and you approach it from a folk singer-songwriter standpoint almost, and it's a completely different experience.
And well, you said it right there with the singer-songwriter. That's the difference there, is that very few groups have all members of the group being strong songwriters.
Right.
That's a very rare thing.
That's true.
And so, I mean, the catalog of material that they must have had to pick through when it came down to what they were going to record and what they weren't must have been just incredible. But that's a case where, genre identity, or maybe it limited them in a little bit. I mean, they were still massive, but if they were lumped in with those other groups, did that make more conservative or adult contemporary people not listen to them as much? Because you're right, a lot of those songs do have a folksy sound. Dreams is one of the most sleepy adult contemporary songs that Fleetwood Mac has ever done.
Right.
So, things like that.
Mm-hmm. And this is another interesting thing. And when I was reflecting on this topic, some genres are more fluid than others. You ever think about this? Some genres are really
allow for you to expand.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean? Yeah.
Well, maybe that, but also like. So I don't think it's any mistake that as genres get more popular, the muddier their identity is. For example, rock music has sort of gotten muddy over the years, and that's due to innovation on artists' parts.
Yeah, we discussed that a little bit in a former previous
but it's also
podcast.
getting more poppy, a lot of people would say, a lot of people would argue. Country music is definitely doing that, where it's losing its identity in this pop craze, so to speak. And it's not so much that, and it's not that pop music is bad. It's just that I think that producers know what works, and they want their music to sound a certain way because they know if it sounds a certain way that it's going to sell lots of albums.
Well, it is particularly. I mean, when you talk about the dollar, if there was a producer that we're talking about, his interest, obviously he wants it to be successful, and this is no surprise that a number one hit on a country chart could net you hundreds of $1,000s, and a top hit on the top 40 mainstream could net you millions of dollars. So it's a completely different ballgame when you're bringing money into that part. Obviously, yes, you want to be successful. I think most artists just want to, have their sound out there. The core artists that are really doing it for artists. I think there's very few people out there in music today, regardless of the genre, that are saying, I'm doing this just for the paycheck.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That doesn't exist.
Maybe they do that after they've been in the business 40 years.
Maybe.
And they just want to tour their golden years, for lack of a better word. Their golden years on their old hits.
Sure.
And that's great too. I go see anybody touring, old music for years. I'm thinking of like the Diana Rosses and the Huey Lewis's of the news. And
right.
People that aren't generally putting out new music nowadays.
Yeah. And then contrary to that, what expands upon that point of genres being more popular they get, the more niche they get, the more firm they are in their identity. You think about that? So like screamo, dubstep, reggae, ska, rap.
Yeah, well, ska's a perfect example.
Yeah.
I mean, almost anybody that like starts out in that genre has a tendency to morph over into more of a... It kind of died, actually.
Yeah.
In the late 80s, early 90s. No Doubt is a perfect example. Their first two albums are very ska.
Yeah.
And then you go to, Return of Saturn and Rocksteady, and you're like, yeah, those are... They definitely delved more into the rock.
It was completely different.
Pop.
Yeah, they did, and maybe that was them evolving their sound, and maybe they happened to evolve their sound to a more popular sound, or maybe they were getting pressure from powers that be to be like, hey, your music should have this sort of sound to it, if you want to sell more albums, and so they just fit with. They're like, all right, we want to sell more albums, so we'll do that. Maybe that's what happened, or maybe they just got lucky and their artistic muse moved into the pool of the zeitgeist.
It could be just the makeup of the artist in a particular band too. Yeah, now that applies to bands, but there are plenty of solo artists that have morphed over time too. So who knows what type of things come into play with that. But I think from a musical standpoint, in general, I think genres are limiting to the musical artist. But not completely unuseful, because it can definitely be a tool to use to establish yourself at the outset of their careers. Well, we can start talking about the other side of the coin, which is the consumer, the music lover, the critics, and how it affects them. Now, the obvious stuff right off the gate is genres are obviously very helpful, because if you're attracted to a particular type of music. If you're, looking... Personally, genres don't necessarily bother me positively or negatively, because I like all kinds of music. Right. So I don't care as long as it's good music.
Well, here's an idea. Like, let's say you weren't that person. Let's say you were just a person who just liked one kind of music. Like, I'm just a country music fan. Would it help you to go to like the CD section when those existed? Go to the CD section, go to the country section, and just pick random album. Like, this is country music, so I know I'm going to like it, and then pick random albums, and then be comfortable with your picks.
Well, just even in the way we can... I mean, music is such a strong tool. It's kind of a language unto itself. Hey, what's that Stevie Wonder quote?
Music is a world within itself with a language we all understand.
That's Sir Duke.
Sir Duke.
Yeah. So, that in of itself... If you're trying to communicate with somebody, it's helpful to go like, oh, hey, I heard this great song. I know you'll love it because that person likes genre XYZ.
You're right, but you also know that person's taste. So I like rock music. You like rock music, but then there's people who like Pink Floyd.
Sure, it's nuanced,
and then people who like Rush.
I get that, but if you can't even get into the lane. If you don't have any way of communicating to somebody, like if somebody was going to try to pigeonhole my music collection into a genre, it would never happen.
That's true.
I have everything.
You're right.
From every genre.
That's true. You do. And so that's genres matter less to you because of that.
But again, I can see that I may be one of the rare ones that has the eclectic and widespread range. Most people kind of stay in a lane. They like country music, they like pop music, they like hip hop, they like whatever they like.
That's true, and I personally think it'd be hard. Maybe there are like, okay, so if we were to imagine like half people who like everything, half people who stick to a lane, like you said. Yeah. Of the people who stick to the lane, there's people who like everything in the lane. And then there's people who only like specific things within the lane. And those people, like, for example, like, let's say you like rock music, but you don't like Nickelback. Or Linkin Park.
Why do we always seem to be picking on Nickelback?
I don't know. I'm not trying to.
Anyway.
Or Linkin Park. Or let's say you don't like punk rock. All right, so then now a lot of bands are cut out for you. So like Blink-182 and Yellow Card and Green Day and those kinds of bands of the Ramones, those don't make it into your those
They don't get through your filter.
they don't. Yeah, exactly. but they're still considered rock music. So I don't know. Or conversely, let's say you only like punk rock music, and then all of a sudden there's all these bands that you're not interested in. So I don't know. What do you guys think? You should tweet us. Tweet us at Beat Measure, the Beat Measure podcast on Twitter. We'd love to hear your response. We'd love to know, if you're that person who likes to stick to one genre of music. Do genres help you? Because neither of us are really that person. We like all kinds of music.
And it seems to me that when done properly, this could be utilized as a tool for the artist and the consumer.
I mean, it should be, right?
It's right.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, though, you're always going to, like you said, there's always going to be other elements playing into it. It could be the artist himself at odds with whatever producer, pushing them into a lane that they're not really comfortable with. Because you hear side stories about all kinds of singers saying, I don't want to do that song, I don't want to do that song. And then it ends up being the biggest hit of their career. The one that comes to mind straight off the bat is...
Love Song? I'm Not Gonna Write You a Love Song?
No, but Cher, Turn Back Time.
Yeah?
She did not want to do that song. Didn't like it, and I don't know if she didn't like the presentation from the songwriter, and it's a songwriter she worked with, Diane Warren. She's one of the best-known songwriters in the business that's just a songwriter who doesn't sing on her own.
Sure.
And yet that turned out to be Cher's biggest hit of all time. So, there's a lot of other elements that can come into playing things. Maybe it's played in the wrong style. Maybe it's presented in, a lane that a particular artist feels that it's not relevant to them. Or whatever gets caught up into labels. So, yeah, at the end of the day, I guess genres are...
a mixed bag.
It's a mixed bag. I personally feel they're neither helpful nor harmful. They have worth, but they need to be exercised with a bit of, leniency, a little bit of birth in the way that they are communicated, particularly coming from the artist standpoint, because they obviously definitely have an idea of what they want it to sound like at the end result, or maybe they don't. Maybe they go through the whole process and goes, at the end of the day, this doesn't sound like me.
Well, yeah.
And toss it.
Oh, I know for certain that artists do that. Yeah. They toss a lot of their music. Or keep it safe somewhere.
But let us know what you think. It's definitely an interesting conversation, and we may have to dive into this. We can dissect this in further podcasts.
Yeah,
maybe.
There's also
how it applies to different genres. It may be some genres are not affected at all.
Yeah,
like I think of jazz music specifically. Jazz is pretty notably jazz.
It is.
There are different types, and some that are more blues, and some that are have more of the country kind of background to them, or the more rock blues. So, there's a lot of ways you can go with that, but still, jazz music generally has always stayed jazz music. You can still at least put it in that lane.
Yes.
Which, there's very few other genres that do that. But anyway, I'm rambling here.
Yeah. Let us know what you think. And we didn't even get into just this point just occurs to me. We didn't even get into, if people even think about music that deeply. Anymore, like the general music populace. I think most people I like what I like, and they don't really think much about it.
I think at the time it was used even in segregation. I think back to the days when the American Music Awards, when they presented awards, they had separate categories for what they called black music.
Oh, yeah.
That was just 30 years ago. It wasn't that long ago. In the 80s, when Prince won the best pop black song or whatever it was.
What?
Yeah.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's definitely signs of how little we have evolved, or how long it's taken for us to evolve. Yeah. As far as that goes, even from the days of the civil rights movement, they still called it black music for many years.
That's crazy.
And I think as we've expanded, soul music, that's what black people listen to. Rock music, that's what white people listen to.
Yeah, there was an attitude of that.
Country music, that's what Hicks listened to. That kind of a thing.
We still do that to a sense, but yeah, that's crazy. Okay, so we want to get into top fives?
Top five. This is an interesting top five we got.
This was daunting. This was intense.
It was daunting. What we did today is we picked, because we're talking about genres, and I thought this would be a good topic because it's genre crossing, I should say, and it's the top 5 duets. Yeah. Which I know I can hear you guys' all eyes popping out over the podcast.
This is a
it's like,
broad
what? How are you
topic.
ever going to come up with this? It's a very daunting topic.
Yeah. Yes.
Oddly enough, I will say that I came up with my number one pick first. Because I knew what my favorite duet of all time was.
That's cool.
Yeah. The rest were very hard.
There were, yes, exactly. That was my experience too. I found two that were particularly easy, and then I had to come up with a strategy. How am I going to get three more that I feel comfortable putting on a list like this?
So let's start out. What's your number 5?
Okay, so I try to keep my list very clean. I try to be sort of really proud of my choices. And I am proud of my choices, but I definitely left a lot out. So my choices were... my number 5 choice is funny. It's American Boy by Estelle and Kanye West. Have you heard the song?
Yes.
Okay, I picked this song because I think there should be more pop songs like it. It was really impressed me. The jazzy melodies and harmonies. It's a beautiful jazz pop song. And I think there should be more jazz influences in our pop music. I think that, Kanye does what Kanye does. There's that slight avant-garde feel to it that Kanye brings. There's a driving synth bass and rhythms. It's just a really classic sort of hip-hop pop piece of music. Mm-hmm. And there has been so many hip-hop duets. Yes. It felt bad to not include one. And this, to me, was... I feel like more music should sound... A lot of radio music should sound like this. I feel like it should be sort of the standard for pop music. That's what I think.
So my take was a little bit different, and maybe it's just my age coming through here, but I don't have any duets that were past the decade of the 80s.
Okay.
No duets.
Okay.
And I think I had a real problem. I really, really researched, duets done from the 2000 ups, and there's, of course, the big swing, particularly now, and it's still going on, is collaboration. Yeah. Everybody's collaborating with everybody. It's 3 and 4 people getting together to do one song, and almost every song has got, a hip-hop collaborator, or Nicki Minaj comes on and does a little rap bit in the bridge, and all this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So I kind of strayed away from that, thinking in my head that those aren't true duets. To me, a true duet is straight up the shared response of both songs, either singing, harmonizing, or you take a verse, I take a verse, kind of, and that's where I concentrated my efforts on. Yeah. And I think just because things being what they were, there's no reason I didn't purposely discount those. But when I really valued the true duets that you hear going on today, they just paled in comparison to what I grew up with. That's but funny. Anyway, one of my first ones is a Motown hit from Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell, and that's "Ain't No Mountain High Enough."
There you go.
Still one of my favorites, one of the best rock, pop, soul, whatever song you want to call it. Mm-hmm. This song just emotes a lot of feeling. It gets you excited. Mm-hmm. It's a fun song to sing along with. I will mention that even though Diana Ross released her own version of the song and it actually charted higher, I prefer this version. Yeah. I think it's the purer form. I do too. The two different... It's not a one-sided conversation. It's two-sided, and I think that plays to the song's strength. Yep. And has always just been one of my favorites. So that got my number 5 spot.
Yes, that's a good one.
Number 4 is actually kind of a throwback too. It's from the 70s, and that's from my favorite movie. Okay. Grease. You're the One That I Want. Yeah. John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John. And I think one of the reasons that this song it's a great, powerful song on its own, because that guitar lick that just comes up at the beginning of it, it just makes it what it is. It's the bass line, okay. Yeah. But whatever it is, that just gravitates and pulls you in the minute you hear it start up. And I think, but one of the big selling points for this obviously is the movie. Mm-hmm. And if you can, in any musical, if you can build up to any one song, this was that song for that movie. That's true. Everything was building up to the reveal of Sexy Sandy and the whole thing, and that song just basically that was the payoff. That was the what do you call it? The climax. Yes. Of the musical stuff all going on throughout the whole movie. So not to get too much into the movie, but I just think that it's a great pairing. John Travolta sounds better. Sometimes he's uneven in his singing.
Yeah.
But in this particular one, it's a good match.
I like it.
With Olivia Newton-John's high...
I agree.
Vocal, and just her kind of like her cool delivery of this is such a departure from a lot of her other stuff. Whereas a lot of her other songs can be smooth and mellow and romantic. This one is kind of an understated confidence that she exudes in her vocal.
Gotcha.
And so one of my all-time favorites.
It's a really good one. There's no way that our honorable mentions list could probably
go on for days,
forever.
Yes.
All right. So sorry that we didn't include your favorite duet. I'm apologizing in advance. Anyway, number 4, I put "Islands in the Stream," Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers. For the vocal synergy alone, Dolly can sing with anyone, I feel like, and make them sound amazing. These two voices, for whatever reason, together, it's just a beautiful, cohesive sound that you have. It's super singable, first of all, obviously.
Yes.
But it's also doing some really cool things outside of the vocals. You have really creative instrumentation and modulation in verse 2. And I feel like good duets always have that key change in the middle. That's what modulation means.
Yes.
It means key change in the middle. So this has that. But really just the vocal synergy is something to behold. If you only hear this at a karaoke bar or whatever, listen to
the same way.
No, listen to the original version with Dolly and Kenny, and they do a great
so
vocal back
spoiler
and
alert.
forth. Yeah.
That is my number 1.
That's your number 1?
It is my number 1.
All right.
So I'll talk about it now.
Yeah.
But the point being, that song is a perfect storm.
Yeah.
First of all, it was written by the Bee Gees, Barry Gibb, who is just one of the best songwriters.
I can hear that.
In fact, they even released a version. The Bee Gees released their own version of "Islands in the Stream," and it's not terrible, but it is not the Dolly and Kenny version that we know and love.
Yeah.
So again, it's a lot of that pairing together. This was basically released on Kenny Rogers' album "Eyes That See in the Dark." It was being produced by Barry Gibb. With the song,
I can hear all those influences.
They were actually working in the studio, and it wasn't working.
Yeah.
Kenny just singing the song.
Yeah.
And they were literally, I think they were in Malibu in a studio, and Barry just kind of said, "This isn't working." Kenny wasn't feeling it, and basically Barry Gibb just came up with this idea. You know what? This song needs Dolly. Can we call Dolly and see what she's doing?
What a genius!
So lo and behold, she happened to be in Southern California.
Nice.
And says, "Okay, I can be there this afternoon."
Yeah.
Shows up, and this is a credit to what a great artist Dolly Parton is.
Yeah.
He's like, "Okay, we'll get settled. We'll let you warm up." She's like, "I'm warmed up." He's like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Yeah, I was cleaning the house. I was singing all morning. I always keep my voice warmed up." So it's just like she basically went in there, recorded it for the afternoon, and basically that massive duet was built.
Come on, that's awesome.
So this is in the heyday of Dolly's crossover appeal. She was appearing in movies, 9 to 5. She was coming up on the pop stations with songs like 9 to 5 and Here You Come Again and all these things that were kind of not direct departures from country, but definitely kind of breaking those genre boundaries.
Yeah.
So she was in a good spot. Kenny Rogers was obviously country music royalty. So the two of them together, they had made many albums and done many specials and things together, so people loved seeing them together. There was always kind of a romantic chemistry with them that people loved and secretly hoped that they were really a couple, that kind of a thing. So that just played into this whole thing. So you get this cute, almost kind of kitschy pop song, and you put two country artists on it that give it kind of that more mellow country sound to it, and I just think that made it cross all lines.
Yeah.
Pop, country, everything, and it was just a great song, a great matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really smart song, and Dolly is so cool of a person and a musical just mind. Let's hang out, Dolly. Let's play Mario Kart together. Anyway, my number 3 was Ain't No Mountain High Enough. You just said
same version.
Yeah, same.
Nice.
Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell. Terrelli or Terrell?
Terrell, yeah.
Okay, Terrell. Okay, so yeah, overplayed maybe, but this song does I try not to factor that into my judgment.
Yeah.
Because that's not the song's fault. This song actually does really cool stuff musically. Really cool stuff. Really, really subtle cool stuff. The first verse, the vocal intro by Marvin sets the tone and it's beautiful. But the verse, most duets are parallel. So they'll have you sing for 8 measures, and then you sing for 8 measures, and then we'll go into the chorus.
It's more like a conversation happening.
Yeah. This has that. It maintains that conversation feel, but it's not parallel. What happens is Marvin sings for 4 measures, and then Tammy sings for 8 measures, and then before you're expecting it, the chorus comes in, and it's sort of like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that yet, and now you're grooving.
Yeah.
And that sort of surprise that you don't usually get in a pop song, because usually these songs follow the formula and they don't stray from it. But that subtle change it does wonders for the song, because now there's this huge momentum pushing the song all the way through. And then added to that is that modulation, that key change that happens in all these duets.
Yeah.
And verse 2 or the bridge somewhere, it's beautiful, and a beautiful sort of ending that harkens back to the beginning again. And all of a sudden, you've been on a journey.
Ties the song together.
You've been on a journey. You don't even realize the song's already over. It's a very smart song. So that made it number 3 for me.
Yeah, and you're not putting your personal and emotional things in it. I try to do the same thing too, because of course, one of the things that I always think about is, Tammy Terrell died at such a young age of cancer.
Oh.
I mean, I think she was like 25.
Wow.
I'm guessing, but she was young.
Yeah.
And then of course Marvin Gaye is no longer with us either, but it would have been great to see. They did a few other songs, a few other hits that were top ones too.
Oh,
top songs. But it would have been nice to see where they grew with that, if they still would collaborate later.
Marvin, apparently doing research, apparently Marvin Gaye has collaborated with everyone. He's done so many duets. So he just kept popping up, and I'm like, well, Marvin, apparently you want to be on my list. But no. This song definitely deserves my number 3 spot. I put it number 3. What about you?
So my number 3 spot has to go to probably what is one of the best love songs I think ever written.
Oh, wow.
It's from a Broadway musical.
Oh.
Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah.
All I Ask of You.
Yeah.
Wraps up the first act.
Yeah.
In which Raoul basically professes his love, and Christine returns it. Which, of course, that's just a great story. Who doesn't want to hear from the person that they love them back? And all I'm asking of you is, everything that you are, basically. And to get a yes response from that. So a lot of the emotion of this song, if you don't know the background, if you've never seen the play, if you've never seen it performed live, this selection may be lost on a few people out there. Some mainstream artists have recorded the song on their own through the years. Barbra Streisand, I think, most recently. But it really is played best as a duet, and it just pulls you in, particularly against the antithesis of the Phantom, who is basically trying to control this woman and subjugate her to his own personal needs. Now, he may love her in his own quirky way, but then for that to be kind of mirrored, or the juxtaposition of that, of Raoul coming and saying, I don't want to do anything like that with you. I want you to be you because I love you the way you are.
Yes.
And that's just a great sentiment. Andrew Lloyd Webber's a great songwriter, and just the whole thing about the song, his presentation, the way he used it in the musical, even the way it translates, just listening to it outside of the live performance, just playing it back, hearing it on the radio, it's just a great song.
Yes.
And I know a lot of people have used this as their wedding song, and for good reason.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's good. That's a good one. Do you have a number 2?
I do have a number 2. This one is kind of the opposite of that, in that it's the death of love.
Oh.
And
dark.
my number 2, well, not necessarily dark, but bittersweet.
Oh, that's a shame.
And that is You Don't Bring Me Flowers.
Okay.
By Barbra Streisand and Neil Diamond. Now, I have to note that actually both of these artists recorded the song on their own. In fact, I think Neil Diamond recorded the song and released it 4 months prior to Barbra Streisand. And a disc jockey somewhere if I did my homework right, I would be able to give you the name, but I don't remember what it is. But anyway, a disc jockey actually got the smart idea to mix the vocals together and make it sound like a duet, and it caught on, and so much so that the artist Barbra Streisand and Neil Diamond went back into the studio and re-recorded it as a duet and then released it. So this song, of course, deals with the reality that I think a lot of people have to deal with in their life sometimes, and that's just the end of a relationship. Good, bad, or otherwise. This one just seems to be like the emphasis of this song is a longing for I wish this could have worked out, but I obviously know it's not going to.
Yeah.
And so this song, it kind of almost brings you to a point where you think, oh, that's really sad, I want to cry about it, but it doesn't quite put you there because of the mature way in which both of these people are accepting the fact that they're just not that person that the other one needs.
Right.
So that, of course, is heart-wrenching. Some of the best love songs ever written, obviously, are about unrequited love or love that is passed on, and this is no exception.
Right. Okay. So I'm kind of excited about my number 2. It's you predicted that I'd pick it.
Oh, can I guess?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is it Pretty Women?
It is. By Stephen Sondheim wrote it. There's been tons of vocal performances of it. Now, this song is so cool. Not for typically the reasons that one might usually praise a duet for, which is interesting. The vocal performances, they're stage performances, unless you prefer the Johnny Depp Alan Rickman performance, which a lot of hardcore fans vehemently don't like that one. I don't mind it. I think Alan Rickman does a great job, and Johnny Depp does a serviceable job in that particular song. But anyway,
well, and to be fair, they're not
singers by trade, obviously. But still, Alan Rickman's performance is the strongest that I've heard from that part. Anyway, beautiful vocal counterpoint, lyrically clever is an understatement.
Yes.
This is a story. This is a 3-act story in microcosm. It is so dripping with dramatic irony, and nothing is wasted storytelling-wise. Nothing at all. Every single lyric
I love the way they lyrically play off each other.
Yes,
too, though.
It has a beautiful waterfall effect.
Yes,
where they're falling over each other lyrically and melody-wise and harmony-wise, and the contrast of he's ignorant and happy and hopeful, and the guy is ready to kill him, and you're just waiting for him to kill him,
waiting for the
shoe to drop, and it doesn't happen in the best way possible. Nothing is wasted. I cannot emphasize that. Nothing is wasted storytelling wise in this song. It is dripping with dramatic irony, and what it lacks in maybe vocal prowess, it makes up for with just top tier dramatic storytelling.
And I think that's the point of the song.
Yes.
Which means that they can get away with being less vocally tuned.
That's right.
So,
and certainly that is the case. Just because a song chooses to emphasize one over the other. What's great about music is you don't need, nor I don't think should you try to have 100% in every pool that you could in music. Because then
something's going to be lacking somewhere.
Yeah. I think the best music knows what to put its toe in.
Yeah, definitely a great choice. One of my favorite Broadway tunes as
number
well.
2 for
which
me.
Of course I've already done my number 1, which is Islands on the Stream again. Most perfect duet.
Good choice.
Loved it ever since it came up. But that leaves your number 1 to be revealed.
Right. Okay, so I did not come across this duet until I was doing research on duets. And this doesn't...
And I have no idea.
Yeah, you don't know what it is.
Not even a clue.
All right. I didn't see it on very many lists. I was just listening for duets or whatever, and I found a song, Barcelona is the song. And it was a duet between Freddie Mercury and Montserrat Caballé. I really researched how to pronounce that. I just forgot. Caballé. She's a soprano opera singer. so she sings. It's opera, and Freddie Mercury. And it must be him on piano. It sounds like him on piano, and vocals. You have that Queen approach. I don't know if you know, Freddie Mercury was trained as an opera singer.
Yes.
But he doesn't sing opera. He sings in his Queen voice, rock, powerful, piercing voice. He has that dreamlike piano that Queen is known for, that Freddie can do. For whatever reason, only Freddie could pull this off. These stylistically opposing voices coming together. You have a typical opera orchestral setup at the start, and it gently molds into that Queen sound where you have that Queen chorus come in, and maybe a little guitar, but it's not overstated. It's not a rock song explicitly. There's a lot of rock song elements to it, but it's really more of a dramatic opera song. It's really indescribable. My whole brain is activated when I listen to this song. When I listen to this song, my whole brain is going, whoa! It's crazy. And I didn't know about it until I started doing research.
I actually am not very familiar with it either. I vaguely, in the recesses of my brain, remember coming across that song somewhere, or talked about, or whatever. I'm like, so when you said it, I was like, oh yeah, I know about that song, but I don't know that song at all. So yeah, you've given me something to go research.
I'm putting it number one.
Okay.
It's definitely my favorite today.
High praise.
It's definitely my favorite today, and and you should go listen to it.
Definitely will.
Go.
Interesting. You kind of kept to like the older songs too.
Mostly.
Yeah.
Mostly,
you have a
yes.
few more current ones, but yeah.
They're all older typically. Yeah. So yeah, that would be. So review our lists. I got American Boy, Islands in the Stream, Ain't No Mountain High Enough, Pretty Women, and Barcelona.
And my countdown went Ain't No Mountain High Enough, You're the One That I Want, All I Ask of You, You Don't Bring Me Flowers, and of course Islands in the Stream. So
beautiful stuff. All right, what's your top 5 duets? Want to hear it? Tweet us at Beat Measure.
Yeah, did we miss anything?
Yeah.
Are we totally forgetting? Which is possible. There was a lot.
Oh, we definitely missed
lot
things
to go through.
There's definitely things we didn't talk about. So let us know what your top 5 is. This topic was big. Okay, we should move on to homework, shall we?
Yeah, my homework assignment was pretty interesting because I thought I knew quite about the artist that you had me research, but I kind of got a different vibe from him in this one.
Yes,
and that was Watsky.
Yes,
Times and you Infinity. Had me specifically looking into the album Times Infinity.
Yes,
this was Watsky's 4th studio album, and for those of you who don't know him, he's basically an American rapper, spoken word artist.
Got to start on the internet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Basically, and when I looked up this album, he basically described his thesis statement for this. His message for this album was that he wanted to show us that embracing our insignificance in the vastness of time and space frees us to be joyful, which is interesting considering it's a very melancholy tone to the album.
Yes.
I'd say it's his most dark release yet, and it's also the most evident of his musical growth.
Yeah.
Without abandoning his trademark wit and his clever lyrical arrangements, that all still stands. Mm-hmm. But yeah, definitely very, very much darker. It wasn't quite what I was expecting. But some examples of the ones I really liked. Stick to Your Guns, mm-hmm. which reminded me a lot actually of Pumped Up Kicks. Mm-hmm. By Foster the People, and not to say that they sound anything alike, but just in regards to the upbeat of the song, but yet the very serious tone of the message. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Pumped Up Kicks, is talking about suicide, and yet it's this very upbeat song that you would find teenagers singing, out of their car listening to.
Yeah.
And this is very much in that same idea. Midnight Heart, which was a collaboration with Mel Devisa, it's just the opposite. It's a hard beat and hard lyrics, but the vocals balance it out. Mm-hmm. And that's her vocals balance it out with his. Mm-hmm. And I enjoyed it, but it had the opposite effect of what his mission statement was.
Yeah.
For me, it was like, oh, this is intense stuff to think about. And maybe that's because I enjoy not just music, but the lyrical content of things.
Sure.
So I don't necessarily have to agree with it or whatever it is, but if it's clever and if it tells a story in the right way, I could be drawn into it. And in this case, it did that, but it left me feeling kind of like,
Oh, sad.
like, oh, not necessarily sad, just like, yeah, there's a lot that goes into being a grown up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just in dealing with life.
Yeah. Life is hard.
But overall, it was a very strong release, very important for him because it really branched out.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, I would say I would recommend this album.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know who Watsky is, I might preface it with looking at a couple of his
Cardboard Castles.
His earlier releases, any of the three, just kind of get a feel for what he is, and then it might give you a different appreciation for this because I think this one on its own may leave people kind of wondering when they hear some other song by him, going, "What the heck?"
I see. Yeah. I feel
so
that.
this should not be your only, basically
exposure to
Watsky, but still very good. I enjoyed it. It was good to listen to.
And I'm glad you liked it. Yeah, Watsky's one of my favorites. He's been one of my favorites for a while. I prefer rappers going through an existential crisis. I don't know what it is.
That's what this is.
That's what it is.
That's what this album is.
I don't know what it is, but those just tend to be my favorites. My homework assignment was Jack Johnson.
Now, did you know Jack Johnson at all?
No.
Not at all.
I mean, vaguely familiar. His number one hit.
Yeah.
Was vaguely familiar, but not really at all. He's just a guy with a guitar.
Yes.
He's just a man with a guitar guy.
He's the one you could say that about, but he like literally stays in that
literally
lane.
that. Yeah. That's all that it is. So if you it kind of all has this optimistic feel to it, like this bubbly Jason Mraz kind of feel to it.
Yeah, that's a good comparison.
Yeah, that's sort of what I got from it. It's great effective songwriting, I think. Where it's just the lyrics and melodies and harmonies are doing what they got to do, and that's all that you get, basically. Like, I got harmonies on guitar, I'm singing the melodies and the lyrics. That's all you need. And it was basically Jack Johnson's approach. My favorites tend to be the ones where he added a little bit more to it. Where it wasn't just him and the guitar, it was other stuff too.
A little bit more orchestrated?
Yeah, a little bit more produced maybe.
Yeah.
Those tended to be my favorites, though I do appreciate the man with a guitar sound in its own right that he typically has. I was listening to Banana Pancakes, Better Together, Upside Down.
Yeah.
My Mind Is For Sale was an interesting one that I liked, and that was the one where he sort of branched out and added more stuff to his sound. It was more produced. So that was an interesting favorite of mine, I think.
I like him because he fits all occasions to me.
Yeah.
You can be doing your chores at home. You can have him playing in the background during a dinner party, or you can just be listening to him in your car. And,
yes.
And I think that's one of the draws to him is that as much as this is kind of sound kind of funny because we're talking about genres, as much as he travels in the same lane all the time, he's very genre defined.
Yeah.
It applies to many different situations.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's accessible music.
Accessible, that's a good word.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can. It's not really. It never is. No, I don't want to listen to this right now. I mean, if you like the music, it's probably just gonna stay on. You know, it's solid music. So if you like that kind of man with a guitar style, give a look up Jack Johnson. He's got some cool stuff on there.
All right, well, we are almost at an hour time limit, so we need to wrap this up.
All right, let's wrap it.
Devin, your next homework assignment.
Yeah. Oh, gotta write it down.
Is the Cranberries? Do you know?
I do know the Cranberries. I just haven't done good research on them.
Not real familiar with them.
No, haven't done any concerted listening to them. No, the Cranberries.
So do a listen and pay particular attention to what genre you think they are, because I think they're one of those ones that could be thrown in a few different categories.
All right, what is their genre? I have it written down. All right, so I have a cool homework assignment for you today. There's this YouTube channel called 12 Tone. It's this guy, he analyzes music and talks about the theory of it. Primarily, he's all theory. That's all that his channel is, and he analyzes popular music and breaks it down.
Is it a YouTube channel?
Yes,
it's called 12 Tone.
12 Tone, and he uses music theory in an attempt to describe why the song is effective. And I want to know basically, I kind of want to know if you can glean anything from it, or if it's too over your head.
Okay.
Kind of a thing.
Is it gonna dive too much into music theory and things like that?
That's what I want to know.
Okay.
Because if it does that, if it does do that, then that's sort of what I aim to do. I try to strike a balance with how I talk about music. I try to talk about music in a way that everyone can understand. The traditional way to talk about music when you go to music school is strictly in this theoretical sense, which is very useful when you know the theory. But when you don't know theory, it's just it can tend to be a different language. But I think I want to know if this guy strikes that balance that I'm looking for.
Okay. You want to know if I can talk about it and you can talk about it.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, so hopefully I can talk about it. Otherwise, this segment's going to be really boring for me next time.
Yeah, hopefully. I hope you like it, too. They do talk about interesting stuff, at least. So that's 12 tone. And I think we should wrap it up.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody, for listening. Again, leave us a message, comment on what you thought about what we said. Expand upon it. If we didn't touch on something that you think was really important, throw that in there, too. We listen to music not only for enjoyment, but also to learn things about it. So
Yeah. And we're running out of topics, so please give us topics. All right. So long.
Bye.